Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We have a special guest today from the heart of Pacific Northwest Retardia, Kristin Sokoloff. How's it going?
Going well. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I don't understand how anybody still lives there, frankly.
I know. It's honestly, I really feel like the Pacific Northwest, for us blue state conservatives, especially on the West Coast, you put armor on every day. We're just unwilling to flee. Not yet. Eventually we'll flee. But for now, we fight.
What is it that you do there? And how did you get into media, I guess, is a good place to start.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm coming out of a 20-year banking leadership career. So this last March, I am officially on my own. And so it really started when, in 2020, I've always been awake. I've always been conservative, involved in the community locally in politics. But in June of 2020, my husband's a Portland police officer. And so as you can imagine, it was really rocking the household, everything we were going through and watching him go through. And I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't be quiet. I had my personal social media, and you're not going to get very far when you're basically ranting to family and friends and neighbors. And so I realized that wasn't effective, and it was really divisive. And these are people that I've had longstanding relationships with. And so I recorded a rant, and it went viral on TikTok. And I immediately went from feeling completely isolated as if I was the only one in the Pacific Northwest with my values to having this built-in community. And I felt really empowered, and I wasn't alone anymore. And so I started putting the truth out there about what was happening with the riots, because they kept saying they were mostly peaceful. Meanwhile, it completely the opposite. My husband, minimal experience was being hit with a diarrhea bomb or a paint bomb or a bleach bomb, right? The police officers were just being treated like trash, yet the media wasn't even touching on that. And so I was really outing that. And it took off, and I started covering stories. My specialty is I like to cover the smaller stories that not every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to put out there. And it was very empowering. And so here I am today. I was picked up by Right America Media, small conservative media outlet. So I've had my show KSOC Uncensored for about 2.5 years now. And that's been wonderful. And I've been able to get so many great guests on. And it's really taken off from there.
Why do you think the Pacific Northwest is so fucked? Like specifically that area?
Yeah, well, I feel like even looking back into my dad moved here from New York in the late 60s. Then it was really this idyllic place for someone who was liberal minded. But back then, I really think about what was happening, during Vietnam, et cetera. Back then, it was this utopia for free thinkers. And it attracted that mentality, which is wonderful. I'm all about the free thinking. It was very different at that point. So anyone that felt like a misfit would come to Portland to feel like they had a sense of belonging, somewhere that they were actually welcome. Well, that has just spiraled out of control. And now it went from being keep Portland weird to where it's really it's very evil, it's lawless. And I really feel that you have either half are the people that just don't fit in society that were attracted to Portland for that very reason. And then the other half are folks that are pretty level-headed, but they are this bleeding heart mentality where they feel like they're doing something right by voting far left. And, look at the humanitarian issues we have, the homeless crisis. We have to love everybody so it's this bleeding heart mentality, and they're so off base.
How long do you think?
It's the voters.
How long do you think voters will continue to vote for leftist candidates, considering how it's getting progressively worse in pretty much every major city? I mean,
it's a great question.
It doesn't seem like it's letting up at all, to be honest.
So if we look at the 2020, or excuse me, the midterms this last year, 2022, the gubernatorial matchup there, Oh, so we ended up having a real shot, and the Democrat did win, but she won 52% to 48%. So as far as statewide, there was an awakening. We didn't have a strong candidate. And so a lot of people voted for the independent in Oregon, which is just, it's asinine. And it really makes me sick when people don't realize you're just killing our shot at actually having someone who's sane as the governor. But I do feel like as a state, there is a bit of an awakening. And if people looked at Oregon and broke it down by county, they would see Oregon is quite red if you took out Portland, Salem, and Eugene. So I do feel as a governor standpoint, we could actually take back the territory. Now, if you're looking at Multnomah County or Portland proper, that's really a shot in hell. I don't see that happening because there's too many people out there that are so focused on virtue signaling.
Yeah, I mean, so Ted Wheeler got ran out of his own fucking condo. And
Right.
you would think that would be a good sign that the folks involved in that particular movement aren't reasonable people, because
Right.
he bent over backwards for leftists, and
He did.
they still tried to burn his house down.
They did. And so just recently, he did a ride along with a police officer in Portland, and they did not pursue a vehicle. So they went to pull over a vehicle, and the vehicle didn't stop and took off. And they didn't go after the vehicle. And he's like, what's going on? He's like, we have non-pursuit laws. And so actually he was pretty sickened by that. And he's apparently revisiting that to see what can be done, because it's at the point where if you get pulled over in Portland, you can just drive off. You don't have to stop because they're not going to come after you. Same thing in Washington State.
So what do they do?
And
Like
so
mail
that's
you
a
a ticket or
problem.
some shit?
Nothing. Yeah.
Oh, looks like a
It's
move
a
to
haven
Portland.
for criminals. I told my husband, I don't know if I'm going to pull. I mean, I like to talk,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I don't know if I'll pull over. Why would I pay a ticket? No one else has to. So yeah, not good.
No, that doesn't sound good. And it's like the analogy I like to use is it's like we're just letting toddlers run our government at this point.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Or
Absolutely.
I guess probably more apropos is we're allowing like 18-year-old freshmen in college on cocaine run our government, right? Because they're like, they think they have all these lofty ideas. It's like it's so stupid the way this works. And look, I'm pretty educated myself, so I'm not anti-education or anything. But the process that people go through when they enter university, especially first and second year, where they think they've got everything figured out, and then in grad school as well, when they, for the second time in their academic career, think they have everything figured out, and they'll bloviate about this and that and how life's not fair, and we need to do this, when they're talking to an adult, somebody that has some actual life experience, you're like, yeah, people have been trying that for fucking ever, dude. You're stupid. It doesn't work. Like, everything you're saying is dumb, but it's to me, it's like we've kind of leaned into the is-ought fallacy. There is the way the world is and the way that we feel like it ought to be. And it's certainly a good idea to try to improve your position no matter what. No matter how good things get, you should always be trying to improve. But this is the delusion that led to DEI and just equity as a concept in general. Things aren't the way they ought to be, and they probably won't be the way they ought to be. But when you begin to assume that everything must be that way and that everything downstream must be tailored to fit that, that's how you arrive at things like equity, which don't make any sense, right? I mean, it removes the meritocratic portion of society, which means now exactly how is it that someone becomes successful? There are winners and losers in life. You will either win or you will lose, individually, as a group, and then in a single instance and over time, you will either win or you will lose. And if that isn't the case, then someone somewhere is just selecting winners and losers, right? That's how it works. That's how it works. So it's like whomever the in or out group is will select winners and losers at that point. That's fucked, right? Like that's just, I mean, think about it in terms of your office if there's nepotism going on. Like somebody's nephew's there, total retard, right? But continues getting assignments, continues getting work because their uncle runs the company. That company is going to be fucked.
Yeah, 100%. And did you see that track race recently? I don't even know what country the person was
Somalia.
from. And it was like the slowest ever recorded, and that was because of nepotism. And I was like, wow, did she not have enough self-awareness to stand up for herself and say, this is ridiculous, I'm not good enough? Or was the family forceful? Like, you will bring shame on your family if you don't do this. But wow, I think they brought shame with
Lizzo
that.
thinks she's the standard of beauty in the West. Right.
Oh my goodness.
Hefty cinch sack wearing a fucking giant lawn garbage bag.
I remember that commercial.
Yeah. She thinks she's the fucking standard for beauty. So it could be possibly that this woman is just delusional, just as delusional as her family was, right? There's no way she came out in like some weird. It looked like a bathing suit from the 1930s. It looked like a bathing suit that Granny Clampett wore in the fucking Beverly Hillbillies or something. It is.
Bloomers.
We're living in the dumbest period in human history.
100%. Yeah, it's bad. I know. I mean, we're gonna go there with body composition because I'm all about. It's wild. I don't like fat shaming per se, but I'm all about saying you're just not healthy. Someone at that size, we shouldn't treat them like trash in society, but we should not enable that type of eating and lifestyle that's leading to that. And then I think about the disease. We're all paying for that as taxpayers. We're paying for the health insurance costs, the prescription costs for people making poor decisions. But it's such a broken system where, the money is in the disease, not the cure. And so it's really, we're not going to see it change at the top because that's who's profiting off of this disease and this fat, what is it called? Oh goodness. It's like a term that they all use in the community where we're not fat
phobic.
Well, it's a term where they're proud of being fat. It's like a term where it's like you're accepting it. Oh goodness, it'll come to me. But it's just a way of saying you need to accept me at any size. And it's not about acceptance. It's about you're just plain unhealthy. And we're promoting it from the top down as a nation.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I think we should do that with other stuff. Like Hunter Biden, for example. Don't stop criticizing him for smoking crack. He's just living his life.
Right.
But we don't treat if somebody was a drug addict or an alcoholic, we wouldn't say, that's just his life. That's how he likes to live. He's abusing and ignoring his family. It's like, that guy, don't worry about him. And yeah, maybe it's not an immediate impact on your spouse and children if you're a fat piece of shit. You're there. I mean, as a matter of fact, you're probably more there than other people because there's more of you, you fat bastard. But you are going to die young. You are going to die in your 50s.
Right.
100%. You're going to lose a foot to diabetes, then you're going to die in your 50s. That is how every one of those stories end. So, if you think about it in those terms, yeah, you are kind of fucking abandoning your family by being, too weak or dumb or lazy to actually take care of yourself. So you exist.
Well, yeah,
longer.
Absolutely. And that's what they want, right? What they want is dumbed down and lethargic so that we're not able to stand up for ourselves physically, mentally. When you eat like shit, you're tired. So you don't have the energy. And it's this horrible cycle. And also as a family, let's say like the mom or the dad is morbidly obese and they're not going to have the energy to go play with the kid. I doubt they're, throwing the ball in the backyard. They're probably, if anything, watching TV together, microwaving dinners together, right? So it's just this lifestyle that's completely unhealthy all the way around. And do you ever see families at the grocery store and you see the parents? And I feel bad for the kids because they're only eating what they're given, right? Yeah. And you look in the grocery cart and you see mom and dad and they're huge, or even usually just mom, I don't know. And in the grocery cart's just complete shit. And I'm like, that kid doesn't have a shot in hell. Wait till maybe when they're 18, they'll wake up and realize what's been happening. But they are eating what is being provided to them at the table, and it's really concerning to see. And I don't know how that cycle is broken when it's the parents that are leading
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean the angry part of me wants to put like a fucking glucose meter in the all the center aisles of the grocery store and be like if it's above a certain level, you just can't come in here. You know what I mean? Go
Right.
eat vegetables until it comes down. But the sane part of me and the part of me that gives a fuck about individual liberty says that the only way to solve that problem is to provide a better solution than what's being currently provided. Now, I think something like 20 million families live in food deserts, which means they
Mm,
don't have access to high quality meat and vegetables in the first place.
right.
But then there is the broader community, and it is particularly in the Midwest and the South, right, is where this happens. But there's the broader community that has, through habit or culture or whatever, decided to eat garbage food.
Mm,
And a lot of it is because it's cheaper, right? I mean, it is cheaper to
right.
eat like shit. So,
Yeah.
it begs the question, what are we doing? Because the government will never solve. They will only make something worse, always. So
Right.
what private industry, what people in private industry are getting involved in building infrastructure that makes it affordable to get good food into the home. You know what I mean? And there's a couple of
Right.
companies that I work with that I think are pretty good at it. Moink Box is one of them, but it's still like we're talking about maybe 0.5% of the population is using services like that to get really high quality meats delivered to their home.
Right.
For a
Oh
variety of
yeah.
reasons. Sometimes it's they can't afford it. Sometimes it's because they're in a non-delivery area. Sometimes they don't even know about it, right? But
Right.
we are the only way to solve this problem in a way that is consistent with libertarian or conservative values is to build industry to solve the problem, right? That's the only
Right.
way it fucking works. So I don't know who's doing any of that. Frankly, I don't work in those communities. I know a lot of farmers, and they're struggling just to keep the lights on right now.
Right. Right.
So I think it's high time for some middlemen to build some business with infrastructure that distributes, even if it's locally or regionally, high
Right.
quality meat and vegetables and fruits to people who fucking need it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I wonder if they could, I'm just spitballing here. There's something where obviously these programs are funded by the government. There's some way that we could work our way in and have this marriage to where we can get some of the funding towards actually. Well, then again, I blow it up before I even finish my sentence because no, why would we want to make people healthier when we know they can go on diabetes medication? So you're right. Government has to be completely avoided at all costs when it comes to the solution because it's just they're never going to get on board with making people healthier. So,
No, they
yeah, I
won't.
think it's going to have to be some type of like a private company, like you're saying, or a local nonprofit that's really working with underserved communities to have maybe there's classes or whatnot to where here's a class, here's how you can even learn about how to eat in the first place. And then here's some nonprofits that will work with you concerning budget. And yeah, let's hope in the future somebody touches that.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, this problem, and I have for a long time. I mean, I lived in Oakland back in the day, and you know, it's pretty close to being a food desert in certain parts of that city, out near where the old football and basketball arenas, stadium and arena is, and where the A's still play until the end of this year. Yeah, there's no good high quality grocery stores out there, so it's mostly fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know that I see anybody really working on a solution towards this. And then it's because what concerns me is the government getting more involved in trying to solve more stuff. Because really, that's just
Right.
they're just gonna bookend whatever deal they have with pork, right? With ways to fucking funnel money out of that and extract wealth out of the community,
Right.
just
Right.
like they've done with this homelessness crisis in
Yes.
Seattle and Portland and LA specifically. Those
Right.
three cities specifically. LA County spends $1.5 billion a year on homelessness, and homelessness has gone up 20% at a minimum every year for a decade. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like it.
Oh
No,
yeah.
no, you couldn't fucking no. If that was a job, you would be fired.
Right, right. That's just the thing. So I have a business leadership podcast that I'm a co-host on, and we talk about this all the time because he comes from the public sector, I come from the private sector, and we discuss like, oh my, you would be fired in a heartbeat in the private sector if you did even a tenth of all this. It's just insane what government, federal, even state, city level get away with. The complete lack of production, the overspending. It's grossly. Uh, I can't even fathom how it's allowed. And I just ran. So last year, to pivot a little bit to what I'm doing locally. So for the midterms last year, I was a campaign manager for he was a 24-year state senator in Washington state. He was trying to end out he worked for Trump for 4 years. And then he was ending out his career. He was running for a local county councilor position. And he was all about the purse strings, making sure you are in control of the purse strings and making people budget and allocate. And I'll tell you what, the left doesn't like that. They want to just tax, tax, tax. And so that was a wild experience to be able to hear from him directly with his 24 plus years experience on, you don't need to keep putting the hand out for more. There's so many things you can do to make it happen with the existing budget. And so it was wild. It was a real eye opener to be able to hear from him firsthand on how grossly outspent the local politicians on the left, how they spend tax dollars. It's absolutely an eye opener, and people need to be aware.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when you think about working for the government or a government program, it's like if I hire a company to come fix my air conditioning at my studio here, right? One dude is going to come out here, maybe a second guy if they have to install something heavy, but it's going to be one dude shows up, takes a look at the problem, uses his equipment, figures out what's going on, and then fixes it, and I get a bill. In the end, right? That's the end of the fucking program. If I ask the government to come fix that same problem, they send the worker, right? Maybe his manager standing in the corner watching him. And then you have a safety inspector in addition to that. And then after he does his work, somebody has to come and look over the work and make sure that it's done correctly. So I've just 4x'd my the amount of money it takes. Not just that, the equipment, they will charge you. Essentially, this happens. They charge you for an equipment rental as well. It's like you're doing a production, like working in a production studio, and I have to bring a red camera to film something all of a sudden. So it's like, oh, $2,500 for the daily use of the red camera. It's like, all right, cool, man. So why am I paying 4 times as much for you to come do the job poorly? Right.
Right.
And that is the only thing you really need to know about government solving problems, and is that they do not solve problems. One, they make them worse because they do shitty work, and two, they fucking charge you on average about 4 times more than what you would get out of the private sector. It's fucking ridiculous.
100%. So this is the perfect example of that. My dad is a retired school teacher, and at the end of his career, he taught gym, and this is in Portland. I remember going because I was a jock, so I just loved going to the gym anytime I could to help him teach his classes, yada yada. So I went in the back room because I wanted to see all the gym equipment, and there were boxes and boxes of bats, baseball bats, and baseballs. Now, I was like, what's up with this? You could tell they hadn't been touched, and I'm talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. There was a contract where they had to order, the school district had to order baseballs and baseball bats every year, even though the school district had ruled that it was unsafe to play. This is elementary school. So because they had this contract, they had to continue to order equipment that they were no longer allowed to use. And this went on for over a decade. So that's just a little example of the waste that happens.
What did they do with all the bats and the balls?
They were just in storage. Nothing. They did nothing with them. And then they would do this with food too. And my dad was always a maverick. He told me, don't go be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher. He told me not to because I would hate the politics. And I'm glad I listened to him. He was always the maverick. He would try to take things home. They weren't using them, but no, it had to stay on site, right? He could get fired if he brought home any equipment that hadn't been used in 10 years. He would try to bring food waste from the cafeteria. He would try to go donate that.
Mm.
And no, we have to throw it in the dumpster. So it just the waste and the asinine
Yeah, yeah,
restrictions
yeah.
that were in place.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, right? So people have, I don't know if you remember this, but 10, maybe 12 years ago, this couple that ran like a bunch of hot dog carts in Florida tried to, at the end of the day, they would take all the leftover hot dogs from their carts around the city and bring them to a park where a bunch of homeless people were and feed homeless people, right? And they got arrested by the fucking city for doing, I think it was in Miami actually. They got arrested by the city, and it was because there is some law from the FDA that says you're not allowed to give food waste to people, regardless of the quality of the food.
Wow.
You're not allowed to give it to people who need it. Now, this is the same FDA that told you all of the lies you've heard over the past couple of years. It's the same FDA that told you that grain is an important part of your fucking daily diet. It is not.
Right.
It's the same FDA that approved high fructose corn syrup for use in human food, for fuck's sake. Mm-hmm. Like, these people do nothing but lie, but this is how it works, right? So the entire system is set up as such. There's a contract, right, with the government to provide X, Y, and Z, and you can't back out of it, regardless if you need it or not. Now we have these same style contracts with privately run prisons all over the country, where they have, this is private companies who run federal and state prisons. Right. And they have a contract with the federal government or the state government that requires, so like it requires that they have a quota. You have to keep so many prisoners in prison all the time, otherwise you don't get paid by the state. What the fuck?
Wow. Right.
I mean, how is that even possible? And that's on one side. That's the corruption and just the retarded nonsense on one side. And then the other side, you have this woman in Florida, Monique Worrell. I don't know if you've been tracking on this story, but she's a state attorney in Florida, and she has a history of doing this. This is not the first time, but she released a guy who was arrested recently for sexual battery of a minor who was already on probation, released him out of jail on bond, even though everybody recommended that not happen. He gets out on bond and sees two police officers approaching him, thinking, oh, they're coming after me to put me back in jail, and he shoots both of them, right?
Wow.
Now, finally, she got fired today or suspended or whatever happened. But it's like, this is happening all over the country. In your city as much as anywhere.
Right. And so I haven't tracked that specific case. I'm surprised, actually. But what happened recently, I'm not sure if you heard. So Kate Brown, who was our governor before this most recent election, she released a prisoner who ends up being the serial killer who's killed, four at least. They think 6, but at least 4 confirmed. He was released because of COVID. Like, oh, let's make room. We don't want these people to catch COVID in jail. So she releases them. I can see releasing some very low level, maybe someone that's been in there with marijuana charges, even though like old charges when it was illegal, yada, yada. But to release someone who had convictions like a murder. Anyway, so he's out on the street and now he's murdered more women, and they think 6. And that's just what they know of. So yeah, another complete loser. Now she's out of office, so she's not going to be held accountable for that.
Sure, yeah. Since you brought that up, let's talk about feminism for a minute.
All right.
Because I thought it was like meant to elevate and protect women.
Right.
And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, right?
No.
Like there was, I don't know what we're in now, but third wave feminism was that women need to become like men to be successful, which is it's not only is it stupid, but it's just a lie, right? I mean, it's
right.
And it's a lie that was told ad nauseum and with consequence. Right. That is to say, if you said, no, that's not, women shouldn't want to be like men. Why would women want to be like men? That's not who you're not. what the fuck? That doesn't even make any sense. Why would you want to be more like a man?
Right.
You're a woman. But you would get ridiculed, or you're a sexist for saying that. Are you saying women shouldn't be CEOs? Like, no, I don't give a shit what the fuck anybody chooses to do. I do not care.
Yeah.
I promise you,
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't even care if you live or die. Frankly, most of the time, I don't give a fuck. I mean, it's interesting to think about what you're up to out in the world sometimes, but I promise you, I don't stay up at night thinking about female CEOs are like, man, they're taking jobs from fucking men that I don't even know. Are you fucking kidding me? Nobody thinks like that. That is retarded. But
yeah,
whatever, that was third wave. Now fourth wave, maybe feminism. I don't know if they're calling it that. Is well, dudes are women now, and you're fucking racist or whatever if you say that's not the case.
Right.
And the result is just so goddamn obvious. It was so obvious this is what was going to happen, that men start to invade women's spaces and then replace them and do the same thing to them that feminism began to stop in the fucking first place.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Okay, so I talked to my mom about this because she worked in an office in the 70s and would tell me basically women that were hired were expected to have sex with the men there. Like, and this is an actual like office building. So she's like, I talk about feminism and how I'm quite against it. And she's like, I am too. But that part was important, like that aspect of it, to where women were like, the respect aspect needs to be there, which I completely agree with. I think, honestly, this has been a plan that has been made to stop women from getting married at a relatively normal age, to stop women from having the goal of having kids. I think it was all by design. Like, let's break down this family unit. And when you do that, all of these negatives are coming from it. So, like, for instance, like I said, I just left a 20-year career as a bank leader. All I ever wanted was to continue to climb the ladder, become an executive at some point. And I didn't even tell people that I worked with that I had kids, and ones that didn't work directly with me. Obviously, those folks knew. But when I would meet a colleague or meet a leader, that didn't even come up at all, and didn't even come into play, because I thought it would be seen as a weakness. And it goes back to that you want to present as a man mentality, right? Like, I don't have these balls and chains around my ankles. I can do just as much as, let's say, men can do.
Isn't that crazy though? That's a crazy way to think.
It's drilled into you. It is. And you just,
like, you're the person you are. All the good qualities that you have that put you in that position are because of all the things that are in your life, right?
Exactly. It made me, when I became a mother, I was a better leader. And so I'm more patient and understanding and asked better questions. So it was all a positive, but it was seen as a weakness. It wasn't spoken, but you would hear leaders talk about, oh, so-and-so's kids are sick, right? So you would hear things like that would make you feel like, I'm not in a safe space to be able to use my kid as a crutch. Say my kid has the flu, I better figure it out. I better get a babysitter or a family member. And this is in leadership and pretty middle management, upper management. So that was the unspoken environment. And so I played along, not knowingly. I didn't know I was playing along, but I did. And it was amazing when I was able to start working remote in 2020. I started reevaluating what mattered in life. And I know so many people have said the same thing, but it's so true. My husband and I, we always had a tumultuous marriage. It was a pissing contest. Who slept the least? Who's done the most around the house? It really was a very negative, for the most part. The day-to-day grind was negative. And once I was home with the kids, I realized, oh my goodness, there's this huge gap. Like, this is my calling. I want to be present. I want to be a better wife. I don't want to have this be a pissing contest every day. I want to be a present mother who's actively involved in teaching my kids. I am homeschooling now. This will be the third year that I'm homeschooling, and they roped me into teaching 7th grade. It's a homeschool group. So
yeah. That's the way to do it, by the way. In a minute I'll have you explain how you're doing that. But a bunch of my friends when I was in high school did this thing, and it was way better then it
Yes.
also, you learn really fast how inefficient public school is. Like, you don't, it's
Yes.
essentially 9 hours of daycare. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
completely
Seriously.
unnecessary. Anyways,
Especially when you
continue.
have one teacher to 32 kids,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
what the standard is here.
yeah.
So I started realizing that really life as I knew it, what was not really, it wasn't, I always felt like this. I don't know if you've ever felt it, but where I felt like I was always churning. I always
Mm,
needed more, something else. I didn't know what it was exactly. I was just always churning and never satisfied. And I feel so much more sad. I'm always going to want to achieve. That's always going to be in me, achieve, achieve,
mm.
achieve. But it was different. I felt almost like this emptiness and I couldn't quite figure out how to fill it. But now that I've realigned and I'm no longer working in corporate America, I'm present for my children. I'm a good wife now. I can't wait. Now this would be different. Let me just say, I put a video out recently and I had some mixed reviews on it, which is fine. But I basically said, a little marriage advice. My husband gets home at 5:15 every day. At 4:15, I'm going around and picking up, tidying up, because when he walks in, I think about his vantage point. When he walks in the front door, does it look like a bomb went off? Is there shit on the floor?
Mm.
Is there crap on the table? What does it look like outside? So it sounds really crazy. He never set expectations. I need my dinner ready. I need the house picked up. That wouldn't have gone over well. Let's just say with me. I do it because I want to.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I don't understand why this is so goddamn hard. I mean, I guess it is easy to understand. People have been lied to. This is the big lie.
Yeah.
The big lie told to women specifically is that saying that you should do something means that you must do something, right? You're free to do whatever the fuck you want, dude. And I'll tell you this, like this idea that you can work for a corporation and make them money and grind yourself into paste for them, and that's somehow noble. But if you do that for your family, if you do that for your husband and your kids, somehow you're a slave or some shit. That doesn't make any fucking sense. But it is the willful act of choosing to be a servant leader, as Robert Greenleaf like to say back in the day. You're goddamn right. You're a fucking servant to your family. You're a servant to everybody around you, your community. Every meaningful thing you do in your life will be for somebody else, right?
Right.
And that should be most true for your family. And if it's not, then you're fucked up. Like if you have to go out into the world and do other things to find fulfillment, I can tell you that you're not going to find them there. That's just how it is.
Right.
Carl Sagan said that for me, it's far better to grasp the universe as it is rather than persist in delusion, regardless of how gratifying the delusion might be, right? It is true for the vast majority of women that they are going to find themselves in the service of their children and their husband, if they're straight, if not their partner in some way. You're not going to find fulfillment at work. You're not. No. I'm sorry that you've been lied to your whole goddamn life and that you're $150,000 in debt for college for a degree that's useless. But the reality is that for the vast majority, and it's, again, you don't have, this doesn't mean you should feel forced to do this. You should recognize this in the same way that when your fucking stomach rumbles, you know you're hungry. You know what I mean? Right. These biological urges are 2 million years old now, for fuck's sake.
Right.
Ignoring that and pretending like it's noble to break free of your programming or whatever. God, that's such a pedantic, useless, and pathetic way to go through life.
Right. And if you think about it, that is leading to the mental health crisis that we do have in our country. We have depression, anxiety through the roof. And, I think Chris Rock did a bit on, damn, that basically the kitchen table at night is lonely. Like you can go out and have one night stands or do this and that, or work all day. Like you said, grind yourself into paste at the office. And then you come home. If you're alone at night, gosh, that's lonely. And obviously there's periods in my life where I was single, right? But I'm talking like in life when most people are really looking to cultivate a relationship and a family, that is not the way to go, in my opinion. And it's sad. So I do feel like like I said earlier, my marriage has never been better. We still have our issues, of course. But I'm all about the willful servitude, and quite frankly, I'm really enjoying it. And no, I'm not brainwashed, right? People tell me, "Oh, you're brainwashed," and all of that, but they can say whatever they want. I can just say I've been on the other side of it. I've been there, and where I wanted to be seen as equal, and I do feel like that we are maybe 51-49. I'm the 49. I personally think that makes sense, and it's pretty cool when you can start realizing that and be completely okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think most people would agree that being kind to or helping other people makes you feel good, and then you can pretty easily track that back to evolutionary biology and understand why it's important, right?
Right.
The urge to socialize, the urge to build um, together is a survival instinct to protect against existential threats. That's what it is, right?
Right.
It's the same as thinking your baby's cute, so you don't eat them, right? It's from our primate days, but
Yeah.
that like there's a biological purpose for all of this stuff, and it's been cooking for a while now, quite a bit longer than we've been around, quite a bit longer than human civilization has been around, as a matter of fact. I don't I really struggle to understand why people seem to find nobility in trying to outsmart nature. You know what I mean? We don't.
Right. Right.
We don't. It never works. Like we make GMO crops, for example, and like we can only get them to, well, one, they become far less nutrient dense than they were before, which means not
Mm,
only are our crops less nutrient dense, but it also means the meat we eat is less nutrient dense because that's what they fucking eat.
right.
We every time we think we've outsmarted nature, we completely butt fuck ourselves. You know,
Yeah.
it is so. And look again, there's so many. There's a lot of ways to run a race. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you look at like a lower level marathon. Go out and watch one day. I highly encourage it because you're going to see a lot of different people out there doing different stuff. You're going to
Mm,
see some people
right.
walking. You'll see some people walking. You'll see some people that are disabled in those. I guess it's that three-wheeled bicycle or whatever that you can
Yeah,
sit
those are
down in.
cool.
There's
Right.
there's a lot of ways to finish that race, but you still have to stay on the course. You know what I mean?
Right.
Otherwise, you're
Right.
not part of the race. You're not part of
Right.
the activity that's going on. And if you divorce yourself from this cycle of, learning as a child, finding your niche in adulthood, both as a member of society, but also with your family. If you don't go through these paces, you are going to be hopelessly depressed. That
Right.
is the root of nihilism is feeling like you aren't doing enough. That's why when you were before, when it was mostly about your career, that's all
Right.
that is. That's all it is
Yeah.
your brain and body saying, "Nah, this ain't it, man. We're not. We
Right.
weren't put here to sit in a cubicle and check off boxes on a career checklist. That's not what we were here for.
Right.
We're here to make babies and build civilization so those babies can have babies of their own. That's the whole
Right.
fucking point of
Right.
us being here."
Yeah, I love that. And when I was in the office every day, I purposely chose an office that was close to home. So I would not even I passed up promotions that were downtown. And I have a picture of me every day on my lunch break. I would come home and hang out with my daughter at the time. And and luckily I had my family here to help raise her
Mhm.
when I was at work. So thank goodness for that. But every single lunch break, I went home. And I remember once my boss happened to be at my office and was like, "Oh, I was planning to take you to lunch today." And I was like, "I'm sorry, my daughter's expecting me on my lunch break." And his jaw dropped. He could not believe he pushed on me a few times too. "Oh, I really would like to take you to lunch so we can talk about XYZ."
Mm.
I'm sorry, my daughter is expecting me at home. So I had it in me then. It was starting to creep up where I knew that I needed to be more present, and I wasn't willing to let that fall to the wayside, especially when you have someone at home that expects you.
Sure,
But
yeah.
I encourage more women to do that, even if you are working full time. Still, put your foot down, and it felt really good to stay true to myself in that time.
I think it's probably getting a little bit better in that regard, and I wonder if it isn't that more dads becoming involved in tasks that women used to do, like taking kids to school or staying home when they're sick or
Right.
whatever, has eased the tension a little bit around women having to take time off when their kids have something going on, whether they're sick or they have an event or something.
Yeah.
I think it does seem like, just colloquially, or not colloquially, anecdotally, from talking to my buddies who have young kids, it does seem like it's becoming a bit more reasonable in that regard, right?
Yeah,
My
I think
friend,
so.
my friend does the Dad Edge podcast. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it before, but it's pretty good.
No, sounds
Yeah,
great.
one of the things that he talks about a lot is what he considers to be non-negotiables, right? So it's like
I love it.
at X amount of times per week at this time, we have dinner together as a family, and nothing, I don't care what happens, unless it's a literal emergency, like somebody's hurt or
Yeah.
something, nothing gets in the way of that. Like if somebody's like, hey, I've got an important call, it's got to get pushed to the right for 30 minutes. Like, sorry, it's got to get pushed to tomorrow because this is, like, this time is blocked off already. I
Yeah, that's
don't,
powerful.
yeah, I think people kind of feel weird sometimes about scheduling activities with their partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, kids, or something like that. Maybe it's like it's well, that you should just do that sort of stuff. But I think you need to put it on your calendar and then stick to that
Yeah.
schedule, right? I think it's really important to
Yeah.
have that time.
I do too. I think it shows a respect for yourself and for your relationships. And in the business leadership podcast that we do, it's called The Dirty Side of Leadership. But I talk about this all the time. I've never, I'm sure you've seen emails come in from certain people, especially in the corporate world. They come in on a Sunday at 10 p.m. or Saturday night 8 p.m. And I'm like, I don't go, oh my gosh, how amazing. Marty is working so hard. Man, he should just really get a promotion. I think, what a loser.
Yeah, it's like, what
Do
are you
you
doing,
not?
dude?
Exactly. It's like you don't have enough self respect to block off your weekend, or do you not have the time management throughout the week to make sure that you have a true break? So I never thought that was something commendable. I always thought it was actually pretty piddly to be able to see people not have enough self respect to turn the computer off for the weekend and actually put time on the calendar for yourself and for your family.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, and as a manager of people, as I've been for some time now, I try not to, because I have stream of consciousness, right? I'm in my
Mm-hmm.
brain. I'm always working, no matter what I'm doing. It just, that's the way my brain works, and I get bored.
Right.
Like if I go on vacation and somebody isn't constantly, someone isn't constantly distracting me, I'll just go start working. You know what I mean? That's just,
Right.
because I actually enjoy I write a lot. I enjoy what I do. So it's not like I'm pathological about it. I just actually enjoy it. But I have tried to stop. This used to be bad. I used to do this all the time. I would be up late at night, kind of winding down for bed and have a bunch of thoughts and email one of my subordinates. And they feel like, because I'm the boss, then that there's some sense of urgency there. So I had to stop doing that.
Right.
I would save
Right.
the email as a draft and wait until the next morning to send it,
There you go.
moving forward. That's how that, like. But you should, especially if you're in a position of leadership,
Yeah.
whether it's parent or you're an actual manager at your office, you got to think about that stuff sometimes, because the worker is always going to feel like there's an impetus to get things done as
Yes.
quickly as possible, right? And
Right. And
and
you're cultivating that. So if they see
yeah.
the boss sending an email out on a Saturday, they think, oh, okay, so if my boss is doing that, I should probably be doing that. So it is good. I think that's good that you thought about that and saved it for the next morning.
Mm.
And I get it. It is different when you're an entrepreneur or you're self-employed. That's a different world. So I get that. Things are just going to be coming at you all the time.
Yeah.
Even more so a reason to schedule your personal time, I think.
Yeah, certainly it is. But I think you can use that skill in both ways, frankly. And because, yeah, I do own businesses and have employees and stuff. So, but I do try to realize that my level of investment in that company is quite a bit higher than somebody who's just getting a salary for it. You know what I mean? That's a
Right.
really different thing.
Absolutely.
Tell me about you're a co-host on one show and then you're a primary host on another. Tell me about those shows.
Yeah. So KSOC Uncensored, that is a political talk show, but my guests range from having Dr. Robert Malone, where we're clearly talking about very high level medicine, the inventor of the mRNA technology, down to someone your vet that lives in the community, right? I've had local folks on who have a message that they want to share. And so our topics range from politics to health to what you should have in a go bag, emergency preparedness. So we talk about anything that is to better yourself and to we want folks to wake up and take control of their lives. But also sometimes it's just hearing something you already know from someone in a powerful position. And so it's been a really great learning experience. I've had some country singers on, Ed Cafe Anderson. It's been amazing. And so I think you just never know who you're going to get on my show. It's pretty fun. And I'm not always, I think what's unique about me is I'm not always going for who has the most followers. I've had people on that have zero social media presence, but they have a powerful message. So I really am for the people. I feel like there's so many grifters out there, and I am like the anti-grifter. I can't stand that where someone's just doing it for the likes, for the follows, for the comments, for the limelight. I think we all need someone that's really going to talk the talk but walk the walk. And so that's what I pride myself on, is being uber involved. So we talk a lot about that on KSOC Uncensored. And then I have the show that I'm a co-host on, and that's the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast. And my co-host is a best-selling author of the Dirty Side of Leadership book, and he worked for the government in high-ranking positions. And so he brings a lot of leadership experience and knowledge, and definitely we go there. Like we just talked about, you mentioned DEI in the beginning of the show. We go into topics that most leadership podcasts won't. Like, is DEI dead? Or, like why DEI is more divisive in the workplace than it is bringing people together. And so we really are pretty edgy as far as leadership podcasts are concerned. And we've been pretty open about our political views, even though we decided we weren't going to do that initially. I think naturally, especially being wired like I am, naturally you just you end up there. And so, but people have really enjoyed it. That just rolled out in March. So that's a fairly new podcast, but it's doing well.
And what's your goal with that?
Honestly, for me, with the leadership podcast per se, I've been honing skills to where I could be a leadership coach. I could be a speaker at a corporate event, and just helping people understand different aspects of leadership that they're not generally going to hear from your average speaker or leadership presenter. And so, so my co-host, he has this whole company where he goes out and he teaches different leadership aspects. It could be, he even has a diversity training, but it's very different from your quintessential diversity training. So that's part of what I can do, is go out and talk to corporate or federal, whoever has employees that they want to do some leadership training with. And so that's what I'm doing with that. And I'm currently writing a book, and that's exciting. My co-host Ron, because he has that experience in writing a book, he's like, you have a book in you. It's been really pushing on me to get that out. So, and that's not going to be, there's a lot of people that are writing political books, and that's great. For me, I really felt this calling. I am really good at labeling a interpersonal relationship and filing it away. And that's what my book is going to be about. How you can really, you look at someone and you think that's a friend of mine. They don't check every friend box. They have some issues that maybe they can be flaky. Maybe they can be like the frenemy, right? Where they don't compliment you on your achievements. But I truly feel that if you can look further than that and understand why they're acting that way, you label them, you file them away. You don't have to sever all of those relationships. You just know the face value.
Yeah, I say that all the time. I love it. When talking about trust in friendships or business, what I like to say is that I trust them to be who they are, right?
Right.
Which is predictable and manageable. And if it becomes unmanageable, obviously you got to sever it. But
right.
Yeah, not everybody is going to be. And frankly, it's a little bit narcissistic and arrogant to expect everyone should both have the same values and then behave as you would.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't think you're doing yourself a
Right.
whole lot of favors by you just seem like a
Right.
self-righteous asshole, frankly.
Yeah, and you'd be amazed. You probably have seen it. There's a lot of people out there. They will write somebody off for very little things, and even long-standing relationships. I've seen people write off their siblings,
Mm,
and something that's important to me and that's really shaped me with forgiveness is I have a sister she's 5 years younger than me. She was a very heavy user for 10 years and manipulated my parents out of money, and they enabled, and it was a really tough time for the whole family, the stress. And then I was always the bad guy because I'm very transparent and very blunt. I'd be like, you're enabling her, let her live on the streets. Then I'm the asshole.
mm,
So it was a tough 10 years. She was stealing, and to as many do, stealing to get money and then selling whatever she was
mm.
stealing and to feed her drug addiction. And about 5 years ago, gosh, maybe even 6 years ago, she was arrested. She had been arrested dozens of times, but she had the book thrown at her, and she got a 3-year sentence, and that's here in Oregon. And she sobered up. It was amazing because there's ways, obviously, and a lot of people think, oh, in prison there's no access to drugs. There sure as hell are. And but she decided this is it. So here she is 6 years later, and she's been clean, and she's married. She's thriving in her career, and she goes to her classes constantly. She's there 5 days a week. She's mentoring dozens of women, and it's a lesson in forgiveness because if I would have written her off, she stole from me, right? If I would have just written her off like so many do, that would have been really sad because I would have missed out on this great relationship that we have today. But I can see not everyone is wired like I am. I am a forgiving person. I know what someone is capable of, and I think that's really important. I always know what could be there negatively
Mhm.
and positively. And I just it's a reality of they still could do this, but I'm choosing to forgive that, and let's move forward until I have reason to maybe backtrack a bit.
Yeah, I mean that's just a sign of leadership, I think, because you wanna pull people up any chance you get. Yeah, like
Right.
we all exist in this world. If you like, if we just let people constantly slip through the cracks, then eventually we're
Right.
gonna reach a critical mass and have Portland, for example, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
fucked. Look, thank you for
Right.
coming today. I really appreciate it. It's been a good conversation. Make
Absolutely.
sure you guys check out KSOC Uncensored, and also check out the dirty side of leadership. Dirty as in like not sexually, obviously. Um,
No.
I think we're beyond that now. Well,
Yeah.
for the most part. Yeah, thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.